Hello, let's have a brief recap on the functions topic and talk about some error messages that we may see in the compiler. So let's start off with this exercise. There's something missing from this piece of code. Could you tell what it is? So in this case, what is missing is the return type. Every function has a return type. So in this case, the return type is void because there's nothing being returned. But let's say we have a return type of int. We need to have a return statement that returns an integer value over here. So some things to know about the syntax of functions. We need to have the return type, we need to have the function name, and for each parameter we need to have the data type and the variable name. We need to have the curly braces, and we need to have a return statement. In the case of a void function, we do not need a return statement, but other times if we have an int function over here, int return type function, we need to return an integer. So when we are using functions, like in this case, we have this print hello function here. We need to be careful whether it's a void function. What is the return type? In this case, if we try to assign like this function to string word, this will not work because it's a void function. There's nothing being returned that could be assigned to word. In this case, this is not a function call because it's missing the parentheses. For C, it's the same issue as A. There's nothing being returned, so there's nothing that we could see out. And for D, it has an extra name argument over here. So if we are actually intending to call this function, this would not work because it does not match up with the function signature that we have here. So all of these would not work as we intended to work. So let's talk about some pass by reference and pass by value of functions. So we have this main function over here, and it has this main x variable. So full function, the first argument is passed by reference, as we can see from this ampersand over here. The second one is passed by value. It's passed by value by default, except when we use ampersand, it means that it's passed by reference. So whenever we want to pass by reference, the argument over here that corresponds to the thing that's passed by reference, it has to be a variable, because a variable corresponds to some memory location. And when we want to do a pass by reference, we need to have like a specific memory location allocated to it. So let's call full function, and the stack frame is created. Full y has a value of 5 because it's passed by value. So it copies over 5 and it has 5 over here. And full x, because it's passed by reference, we can think of it as like an alternate name for main x. So full x and main x refer to the same memory location here. Full x plus full y is 6, and 6 is assigned to full x. So full x updates the value here to become 6. So, yeah, becomes 6 here. So after the function has finished executing, what happens is like these will be destroyed, and we are left with this. So if we try to see out full x after this, this will not work because full x no longer exists. The same thing goes with full y, no longer exists. So let's have some more exercises over here. For A, it will not work because it's supposed to be a pass by reference here, but this is not a variable. So A does not work. For B, it works because there's a number is passed by reference, and this is passed by value. So what we have here is number, and when the full is called, y is passed by value, so it copies over 2, and x is another name for number. This works. After the function finishes executing, it gets destroyed. For C, we have number over here. Even though it's a variable here, because it's passed by value, it copies over whatever value was in here. So in this case, number is 5. So y copies over 5. So we have y is 5 over here. We have x being another name for a number over here as well. And that's how the function works. So let's take a look at the compiler and some error messages that it may have. So this is what we have seen just now on the syntax of functions. So usually the compiler is really helpful because it tells us what is missing. Here the explicit type is missing, so we can run void. And this works after that. For this one, it's not that explicit. It doesn't really say what is wrong with this. So if we try to build it, we can see what is wrong with it. We have an error with building the project. Square must return a value. So in this case, we can trace it back. Line 13, we need to return a value for square here. As you can see over here, it's line 13. So we can return square, and this would work. For using functions, we can, it's the part on, we have this print hello function over here. This is the function declaration, this is the function definition. And this would not work because there's no converter from void to string. We cannot assign some void function to a string variable here. So this would not work. This is not a function call, this would not work as well. But we can leave it there and see what would happen if we try to build and try and run it. And over here, there is no conversion from void to cout to be cout, so this does not work as well. This does not work because there's too many arguments in function call. We are expecting something like this, but we end up with some extra argument here, so this would not work as well. And for the last one, about pass by reference and pass by value. If we look at this usually the compiler is really helpful because it tells us like the initial value to non-const must be an L value. Basically what it means like this cannot be an argument when this is a pass by reference. So we can see it from here. So usually we can see the compiler to find out like any syntax errors that we are doing. But it's good to keep in mind all of these in exams, especially when we do not have the compiler with us. So as a brief recap, what we talked about is the syntax of functions and how we use functions. We should try and check for the brackets. So that's a function call, and that it has a return type. What is the return type? It's a void function. You cannot cout it. You cannot assign it to a value. And we need to know the difference between pass by reference and pass by value. Thank you for listening.